Yo, welcome back to the See-Through Podcast, a podcast that creates transparency on disabilities and the champions with them. My name is Lance Johnson, and I am the host / brains behind this operation, and I live, create, and podcast with retinitis pigmentosa from Brooklyn, New York. This is episode 24, and just like last week, where I had my first episode, where I had two guests on simultaneously, this week marks another first. This episode marks the first time I have a guest return to the podcast. You may remember him from episode 10, but the almighty Blind Biohacker Victor Mifsud is back again. And he's back because I wanted to talk to him about his upcoming Vision Optimization Summit that Victor is running, and he is the CEO of, which is a virtual summit where you'll hear from the world's leaders on reversing vision loss, red light therapy, trauma, psychedelics, circadian biology, and much more. You know, and all of this information is presented in hopes to answer this huge question: why do the eyes appear to be the only part of the body that is not self-healing? And if you know Victor, you know what he's all about. And as his name suggests, he is a biohacker. Biohacking, also known as DIY biology, is an extremely broad and unstructured term that can cover a huge range of activities. But according to Dave Asprey, who calls himself the father of biohacking, biohacking is the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside you so that you have full control over your own biology. And while that might make biohacking sound completely out there, you may already be a biohacker yourself and not even know it. For example, intermittent fasting and elimination diets are both examples of biohacking. And even using caffeine, vitamins, and supplements may be considered biohacking to some. So we may all be a biohacker in some shape or form. So with that said, all I ask is that you listen to this episode with an open mind. To complete this thought, here is a quick disclaimer. Victor is not a medical professional, and the information presented in this episode is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health or personal advice. With that disclaimer out of the way, I'm excited for this episode, everyone. But before we get into the conversation, make sure you follow or subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you listen to. And also make sure to follow the podcast on social media. The handle is at SeeThroughPod, SeeThroughPod. And that works for Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you want to find one convenient place that has everything related to this podcast, just visit seethroughpod.com. And if you're a super fan of this podcast and want to help me in a major way, share this podcast with a friend and rate and review this podcast on whatever platform you stream on, as that will help this podcast reach more people. And with that shameless plug out of the way, here's my conversation with Victor Mifsud.
So what'd you end up doing today?
I've been working, taking a little break to do this interview. But I did around lunchtime. I have like a little patio, and I went out there with my dog and my wife, and like I said, it's the first time all this year I was able to I took my shirt off and I just sat out and faced the sun. You know, got that vitamin D, which is much needed these days.
I actually don't think it's out yet. I don't think it's out until 13 days.
What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, if just because we're pretty high up in latitude wise, just because the sun is out, I think it starts to kick in around April. Let's see.
In terms, are you saying that you can't get vitamin D absorption right now? Is that what you're saying?
Basically, because of the latitude, the UVB part of the signal, which allows us to create vitamin D, we're too high north. Only until like April or so is when it kind of kicks in.
Oh, well, at least the sun felt good.
Yeah. So it's maybe there's a little bit. Yeah, it says vitamin D is only available for another 6 minutes.
Okay.
So, but as we go closer, there's a little app that you can get. It's called D-Minder.
Cool.
D-Minder, and just kind of like tells you how much. But yeah, obviously you're still getting benefit from being in the sun anyway.
And I've been taking vitamin D pills for almost a whole year now. Ever since, with the coronavirus, and I read a few articles, they're like, if you're low in vitamin D, you can feel the effects stronger. So yeah, I've been taking vitamin D. I've been taking zinc, and I've been adding
K2 is really, really good. Important to take, especially if you're taking any vitamin D. K2 is crucial.
Does it just like help it absorb in your body?
It helps it go where it needs to go.
Interesting. Have you heard anything? Because I've been adding quercetin into my smoothies.
I just ordered some. I ran out, so just ordered some.
Yeah, I've been throwing that into my mix. Yeah, I'm having fun with these like supplements and kind of superfoods. Adding them in. I make like a smoothie every day that's pretty just like full of a bunch of different things, man.
That's good. Yeah, making me thirsty just thinking about it. I got some water here.
Yeah, I drink a lot of water. And you know what? Like, would you consider doing that? Like what I just talked about, adding these things into my smoothie. Would you consider that biohacking?
I mean, yeah. It can follow under the umbrella of biohacking. There's just taking care of yourself. Taking supplements and vitamins and all that is in the field of biohacking.
Cool.
I would say.
Because I was thinking about that. For those listening, you probably heard Victor before on episode 10, but he goes by the Blind Biohacker and is a prominent figure in the biohacking community, and his focus is on self-healing the eyes, which we're going to talk about his summit coming up that he is CEO of and is producing, and is going to be live in April
2nd. That's when we're going to do a live Q&A, and then all the other pre-recorded talks will be available from then on. There's 8 talks in total.
Yeah.
Covering peptides, color light therapy, red light therapy, emotional trauma's effect on the vision, behavioral optometry, psychedelics, and vision care, and a few other topics.
Yeah, and that's why you're here today. You're the first guest to return, so I think that's cool.
Oh wow, cool.
Because all the podcasts I listen to, it's like I've noticed a trend. It's like if a podcaster has people on twice, it's like, like they actually like talking to that person. And you see some people come on, 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, all right. And then you tune in every time, and what's neat about it is you get to kind of like unravel a new layer that you didn't get to cover last time. So this time around, I imagine we're going to go in depth on your summit, which is called the Vision Optimization Summit, and we're going to go real deep into that. But yeah, what I admire about you, man, is that what we were talking about a little bit earlier is about biohacking, and you're an experimental guy, and you're not afraid to take risk, if you want to call them that. And I think that people should hear what you're doing and what you're researching, and you're kind of taking matters in your own hands is, I guess, the best way to put it. And that's what I admire about you. So like when it comes to biohacking, would you say there's could potentially be like a negative viewpoint on biohacking by some people?
Well, maybe judging by the terminology, people think like hackers are, bad and, taking over like banks and things like that. So I don't know, that might have some negative connotation. And even the word, I mean, like it could be seen as health optimization as well. Biohacking, kind of Dave Asprey made that word kind of famous. He's the grandfather of biohacking. But it depends. I mean, some people like to listen to doctors, and some people think that doctors know everything and they trust them till till the end. But for me, they didn't really do much for me. They didn't really help me. They always just pretty much said that, we don't know what to tell you. So I didn't really have much of a choice. I was also dealing with other things like chronic fatigue and, gut issues, sleep issues. Again, no, they didn't really tell me how to fix it. I had to figure this stuff out myself. So, that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, exactly. And like what I've found, since, starting this podcast and getting kind of familiarized with what the visually impaired community and specifically the RP community is, there's not really a cure. It's not just for RP. It's like kind of across the board for visual impairments. And, but when it comes to having RP, it's the classic phrase, just wear your sunglasses and take your vitamin A, and that's, that's all you get told. So like what I enjoy about talking to you is that you do wear sunglasses and you probably do take some sort of form of vitamin A, but you're taking it a step further.
I actually don't wear sunglasses. I stopped wearing sunglasses. I used to be the sunglasses king. I mean, I still have them. I have tons of them. About 3-4 years ago, I stopped. I stopped. I used to be quite light sensitive. When I would take my glasses off, I would always be squinting. My eyes eventually kind of got used to it. So, I mean, that might be seen as controversial, and I'm not necessarily advocating it, but I'm a big proponent of getting my eyes used to natural light, allowing my eyes. I mean, I used to wear sunglasses. I wore sunglasses my whole life. I still got cataracts. My eyes still went to crap, and then once I changed things around, I mean, these are blue blocking glasses. These are like a daytime. So I block junk light instead, and I allow my body to absorb in real light. So I kind of switched, and I'm not light sensitive anymore when I'm outside, and I'm not like staring at the sun. When I do go on vacation, if it's really, really, really bright, if I'm down in Mexico, again, because the latitude changes, so the intensity of the sun is a bit different, I actually put on my blue blockers. These ones are, and I have a yellow pair, so it cuts it a little bit, but I don't go full. And it's I find it's benefited my eyes a lot.
That's interesting because I find myself wearing sunglasses less than I used to, just out of preference. Like, I wear a hat. That's like my new tool, So you're wearing a hat right now. But like that does a lot in terms of just cutting out the glare. And what I found is that whenever I wear sunglasses and the sun isn't directly shining on me or on where I'm walking, it cuts, like, it makes my vision worse, So like it's harder to see because it makes things darker. And so it's like, lately I've just been rocking the hat, and then I wear glasses myself, and they have blue light protection on them. So, because I'm staring at screens all day, just like you are. So it's like,
it's good to take breaks if you can. I mean, you mentioned you did that, but every so often, it's really good for the eyes to just go outside and get that light in the eyes. I actually have red lights on indoors as well, like all the time, to kind of balance out the spectrum, trying to mimic outside, inside. I have a big window beside me, and it's actually sunny. I actually drew the curtains a bit because I probably wouldn't have been able to see the screen because the sun kind of goes down this way and just comes in this way. But yeah, I mean, it was the same. That was kind of the same thing. I noticed that the sunglasses would make things too dark, and RP people are night blind, so it's almost like the self-induced night blindness.
Yeah.
So I just stopped wearing it, and my eyes really got used to the light cycles, and my eyes are great. My eyes have never been better right now. So,
And I don't know the science behind it, but like I'd imagine if you're wearing glasses, they have UV protection to a certain degree. I would imagine that.
again, I don't think UV is, that's controversial. They say UV is very dangerous, but UV is very important for the eyes as well. Just like anything, too much water you can drown, but you need water. Same thing with air.
Yeah.
So UV is that same spectrum. We need UV in the eyes. It's very important for the whole process of health. So actually, when I got my cataract lenses placed in, I actually didn't want a UV filter, but there was none available. So I have UV filters already. Anyway, but again, that's a bit controversial in some sense. And I know there's a great book that discusses the importance of how sun works and light works. That he's actually going to be a guest on the summit, Dr. Jacob Lieberman, who wrote the Light Medicine of the Future book. There's actually some interesting articles about RP in there, and I highly recommend that one. It's a great book.
I'll have to check that out. And that name sounds familiar. Was he in your documentary?
He wasn't in my documentary. He's in Nathan Oxenfeld's documentary. He's in my summit.
Okay.
So he will be speaking in the summit. He wrote the book Take Off Your Glasses and See, and he also wrote Light Medicine of the Future, and his newest book, This Luminous Life, also amazing. Great books.
Right on. Yeah, see, you're talking about, you're stating these things, and you're saying they're potentially controversial. So let's backtrack a little bit. Like I was talking earlier, like I asked you if you consider taking like a multivitamin, if you consider that biohacking. But like I think a lot of people biohack and don't even know they're doing it, It's just a word's put to it now, and like, for example, like intermittent fasting, elimination diets, wearing would you say like wearing a sleep mask at night would even count as biohacking? Or
yeah, that falls into that field. Wearing blue blockers, really just being aware of your light environment. That's what it's about. Just really hacking your inner environment and your outer environment to really make a difference in your health. And these things that, doctors might not be telling you to do, because now, information is out there and people are having like major sleep issues. Like, what can we do? And, aside from just taking pharmaceutical medications, like people are tweaking, their environment, or like, maybe I won't stare at my phone screen right before I go to bed, or at least I'll wear blue blockers, or, the red light therapy device as well is huge in the biohacking community. Most of them have that and use it all the time. So.
Yeah, I agree. And you were talking about some people really listen to their doctors and take their word of advice, and that's the only advice they take. They don't do their own research. And I would honestly say, I don't know if I'm going to get called out for this, but that seems like something the older generation falls victim to a little easier than the younger generation. I'm not saying that across the board, but I'm just saying that if you took data about, perceptions of medicine, that I feel like younger people were a little bit less trusting of the field of medicine and like to kind of, Google things for themselves. And would you have any comment on that?
It seems to be the case, whether they just don't like going to the doctor, or maybe they've had other health issues that the doctor can't tell them, what's going on, or they just want a second opinion. So it's great to question things. And, now more than ever, it's needed. There's there's a lot of health issues. I've heard a stat saying that like these generations now born are not going to outlive their parents' generation because of all the autoimmune issues going on, health issues, and the environment's radically changed. So it's time for them to really step it up. And I don't know what the doctors are doing wrong, but they're missing the boat.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think a part of it has to deal with younger people don't want to pay for going to the doctor. It's like the classic preventative care, ends up saving you money in the long run.
Right. Yeah, I never thought of that. We have up in Canada we have free healthcare. Free.
Yeah, see, that's amazing, and unfortunately here in the States it's not that way. And just going in for a simple like physical where you get blood work drawn and you can just kind of see like quantifiable data of your body and how it's working is going to cost you over $100. So it's like it's kind of a detractor if people don't go to the doctor. And I think that's an issue. If no one's going to the doctor, no one really knows what's going on with their body in that regard. And if you're fortunate enough to have insurance, it still costs you money. So it's like not as much.
It's not perfect here. I mean, there's still there's issues with our free healthcare here. Which like wait lines, and it just seems like if you have money, you're still in a better position. Like we don't get free medications and things like that, so we got to pay for that. But like a simple doctor visits, that's covered, and emergency surgery is covered, which is great. But it's not perfect, and it still has its problems. So, but again, that's kind of why I got into it. Really just taking my health in my own hands, and really just from a preventative standpoint too, just how I want to feel better, live longer. So, like the biohackers are big into longevity as well. So, we got to start taking care of ourselves as we get older. So,
are you outside? It sounds like outside of the eyes, you're focusing also on your entire overall health of your body.
Of course, it's a big part of it. It's you can't just focus on the eyes are almost the last kind of stop. So there's still stuff going on in the brain and the body that you really need to be doing. It's not just the eyes. So there's a big the body it functions as a whole. So you can't just be focusing on the eyes.
Yeah, and I think that most people don't think that way, and people might just take their vitamin A, wear their sunglasses, but they don't exercise, they don't eat right, they're not focusing on their mental health, and they'll wait for a cure to come around and just kind of be inactive and not really versus proactive. And I know that sounds harsh, and I'm not saying that's the way it is for everyone, but some can make that argument and that observation.
I was going to say, like a lot of the, I have this little eye here, a lot of the capillaries in the eyes and veins in the eyes are actually really, really, really tiny. And it's kind of like the last stop. So it needs a lot of this energy to get the blood and oxygen to the last stop of the eyes. So if you're not, doing the right things, it's not going to make it there, and it will, it'll lead to a bunch of health problems and issues. So again, you have to take care of the whole system, because the eyes are almost like the last stop. And again, we see with the brains, not the eyes. So, you got to make sure your brain is in tip-top shape. So, and there's a lot of things you can do. And again, we talk a lot about that in the summit, and we don't just talk about the eyes, we talk about the brain and the whole body as well, because it's a complete system. So
yeah, and that's what I'm into, man. I'm into kind of taking care of the whole body. Again, that's why I admire you and what you're doing is so you're somewhere in between. Like, some people are waiting for a cure, and some people so some people are kind of in denial about their disability, and they're just waiting for a cure. Or some people have, on the opposite side, have just completely accepted their disability, and even if there's not a cure, they've adapted and they've accepted their disability, and they're just living their life. I'm kind of into that idea of adapting and accepting your disability for what it is, versus like waiting for a cure. But with that being said, you're somewhere like in the middle. You're like, you'd obviously love if there was a cure for RP, if that came out. But at the same time, like, that's not going to stop you from, trying the things that you're doing. And I want to kind of dive into those things about what you're doing and a little bit first before we talk about your summit, if you don't mind. Like, if possible, like,
not at all.
Could you kind of walk the listeners through your daily routine and kind of what you're experimenting with, and maybe some results you've seen?
I was in a big state of denial, early on. I mean, I knew I had it, but didn't tell anybody that I had it. And then, I lost my license. So then people kind of knew that I had it, and still did my best to hide it. And, it took me a bit of time to accept it. I started, using my cane, and really became, proud of who I was. And, like, that's why I called myself the Blind Biohacker in that sense, because I was just, this is me. And I was, I liked who I was, and, my vision kind of taught me how to see. My blindness taught me how to see, other things. And, but I'm, what you said, I'm in the middle now. I've accepted it, and at the same time, I want to do something about it, because they've been saying, like, oh, we're 10 years away from a cure, 10 years away. But they've been saying that for the past 30 years, and like, how long am I going to wait? So it's time just to do research, take my health into my own hands. So that's kind of where I am now. So again, I've accepted it, and at the same time, I'm doing something about it, which, you can do both. So
yeah, I agree. And I think I'm right there with you, I think. So, which is why we're chatting. With that being said, could you give some details on what you're experimenting with and trying out, and what's working for you, what you haven't seen results with?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. I'm doing a lot, so I'll try to keep this as concise as possible.
Yes, try it.
I'm a big advocate of getting some natural light. So in the morning, I'm always going for a walk first thing in the morning, whether it's gray or sunny. I'm always out. In the summertime, I'm lucky I have a backyard, so I go in the backyard to spend, the early AM kind of watching the sun come up barefoot with as least clothes on as possible. And then I have a whole different slew of supplements that I take, whether it's, some of the minerals, enzymes, and, I get my vitamin D from light. I have a little light set up here, and K2. Wow. I have a whole, bunch of supplements that I take. So that's the big stuff. I do red light therapy every day. I know I mentioned to you that I'm using a red light therapy device for my eyes. I'm shining it on my face for about 30 seconds a day. And there's a lot of great data showing that it does help with the eyes and with vision, not to mention reducing inflammation in the brain if you shine it on the top of your head. That's quite helpful. I'm now into peptides. I've been dabbling quite a bit with peptides. There's a retinal peptide, which there's some great data showing that it can help with RP. And there's another one called epitalon as well, which I'm using that. And there's a great little video on YouTube. It's called Peptides for Ophthalmology. It's this Russian video. People might want to check that out. It's kind of how I first found out about peptides, and it's actually, they're showing great data for helping people with RP. So
before we go past that,
yeah.
Could you explain what peptides are?
Peptides, sure. They're an amino acid sequence. The body creates peptides, but they can also be created in a lab as well to kind of give the body what it needs. It's basically like a signaling molecule. So whatever is kind of off or not functioning properly, whether it's your liver, your eyes, your brain, your immune system, the peptide signals the body to kind of do its thing. So there's really interesting data. I mean, if you contact your doctor, or you can maybe go to the SSRP website to see if there's a doctor near you that can prescribe peptides as well. I mean, and if you're a true biohacker, there's a few sites that are good that you can experiment yourself with as well. There's some good quality peptide sites. I don't recommend buying, really look into the source. Some of these cheap stuff from, China or whatever isn't really the greatest, but there's some good quality companies out there. So yeah, and they can help with the immune system, with muscle repair. Some are available intranasal, so you can just spritz them up your nose. Not all of them are, but some of them are. I've actually turned some into eye drops. There's a BPC, which is one of the most versatile peptides. It's liquid stable. You can drop it in the eyes. There's another one called L-carnosine, which is a peptide drop, which I'm putting in the eyes. You can find that quite easily online. And there's this Russian eye drop, which is not necessarily a peptide, but it is a drops for the eyes. It's called SKQ1 is the molecule, but it's called visomycin as well. So I've been experimenting with that. There's some really great data on how it helps replenish the mitochondria, because mitochondria in the eyes is very dense and there's like a high turnover rate. So if the eyes aren't functioning properly, that's one of the first things to go. So the idea is to really, really boost the mitochondria. Red light therapy does that. And so does, these drops help quite a bit too. So, I'm as a big part of my health regimen is just being outside as much as possible. Infrared sauna as well, eating right. It's a big, proponent of health, especially in the eyes. If you need to be eating right, there's people with diabetes get diabetic retinopathy because, again, it's one of the more sensitive systems. So if it's not healthy, it's one of the first things to go is the eyes.
Is that what that's called? I knew that if you have diabetes, you can lose your vision. I never knew the actual name. So that's good to know.
Yeah, I think it's called diabetic retinopathy.
Cool. And I think that's a good segue, because that's basically what your summit is about. And that's something that you have organized yourself. And I was introduced to you through your documentary, My Neuroplastic Adventure. And for those listening, if you missed it the first time around when Victor was on episode 10, he has a documentary called My Neuroplastic Adventure. Go give it a watch. I think that will also give you a lot of great insight into who Victor is and where he's coming from. So go give that a watch. It's a great documentary. And this summit kind of is like almost like a manifestation of that documentary. You have in the documentary, you talk to various experts and scientists and doctors, and you're kind of doing the same thing here, except it's in the form of a summit, and you have different speakers addressing different topics, and they all center around self-healing the eyes is how you're describing it. It's a virtual summit. If you want to learn more about it, you can visit visionoptimizationsummit.com. Let's switch over to your summit.
Sure.
What is your goal there with this summit?
Everyone's got a pair of eyes. And, we brush our teeth every day. Well, most people do anyway. And, we shower, we eat, but anything to do with the eyes, we just open our eyes and go. And then when it's bedtime, we close them and that's it. But nobody's talking about any type of, maintenance or care for the eyes, whether you're blind, legally blind or not. So, now with technology it's causing, great harm to the eyes, with COVID, everyone's indoors, there was a few articles saying that there's been a drastic decrease increase in vision issues because of the lockdown, because everyone's inside, on screens under, junk light, LED lights and fluorescent lights also are very, very damaging. So I just really wanted to create a little summit and, connect brains and doctors that I know that can offer some good expertise advice into optimizing our sight. And most people think that the eyes are not capable of healing whatsoever. You wear glasses, you get diagnosed with glasses prescription, your eyes just get worse. Whoever hears of the eyes getting better or not needing glasses anymore? Not many people, but it's most definitely possible. And, this has been going on for about 100+ years with this guy named Dr. William Bates, who created the Bates method, which is a way that we could actually heal our vision issues, most of our vision issues, whether it's myopia, presbyopia, you name it. And I really wanted to explore that because I thought the body is intelligent. We break our arm, we put a cast on, and the body does its thing. But how come anything to do with the eyes, it's like you have this vision issue and you're screwed? You can't do anything about it. But I think it might be a little more complicated than putting a cast on, but it's still possible. And as I read more books and saw these vision exercises and relaxation exercises, I drastically reduced my need for glasses with doing a lot of these techniques. And then I wanted to see if I could do anything about that for my retinitis pigmentosa. And, I've been working on this at least, 2 or 3 years, really focusing on the eyes with the things that I've been doing with, the red light therapy, color light therapy, Syntonic light therapy, and now peptides. And, a couple of months ago, I got back from my second visit to my holistic behavioral optometrist, Dr. Angela Peddle, who's also a part of the summit. I'm continuing to show a slow increase in my visual fields, which is, it's really unheard of. Most people who have RP, it's like prepare for, your vision loss. Like I have, where are they? They're somewhere here. I have my, my visual fields reports from 20 years ago in here.
Wow.
And my visual fields were a lot worse then than they are now. So
that's interesting. And you're talking about the visual field test, correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
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 For those listening who don't quite know what that is, it's basically a test where you put your chin on this. It's kind of a weird looking test, and you put like your chin on this like guard that kind of keeps your head still.
Chin rest.
Yeah, chin rest. Yeah, perfect word for that.
Yeah.
And you cover one eye, and you do one eye at a time, and basically you hold this clicker or buzzer in one hand, and you basically stare at this kind of circular dome in front of you that's in my experience is white, and then there's like this laser that kind of gets shined on that white dome that you're staring at, and you face completely forward, and the light comes from the outside of this circular dome towards the center where you're staring at. You're staring directly at the center, and whenever you see that light, you click the buzzer, and then whoever's operating the test will kind of mark where you saw it at, and then it's completely at random, and then it'll come from a completely different direction the next time. And basically you do that in each eye. It takes around like 30 minutes to an hour to complete, from what I remember. I haven't done one in a while. I need to.
The test now runs for about 5 minutes in each eye now.
Okay, that's a lot better.
The other thing is, when you have your eye covered, you're staring at this. You're sitting in this dome, this concave dome that's around you with your chin. So, so lights essentially you could see from, your peripheral vision, your visual fields, and you can't move the eye to look left or to look right, because if you look left or look right, the test isn't valid, because you could essentially, cheat by like looking with the eyes. So there's a way that it knows that if you do move your eye or not, and you have this little joystick pushing the button every time you see it. So then that gives you a little reading of the span of your visual fields. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
It's a very essential test, especially for people with retinitis pigmentosa, because it kind of shows your vision, if it's stable or if your peripheral vision is diminishing. It also picks up like blind spots in your central vision. I have quite a bit of blind spots in my central vision. And, but yeah, so basically you mentioned you have results from 20 years ago, and your results are better now than then?
Yeah, the past 2 times I went to my optometrist, I've shown a slow increase in my visual fields, which is better than nothing. I'll take that.
Yeah. And,
so
honestly, man, keeping it, even stabilizing it is good. Like that's at least that's how I look at it.
Yeah. So something's working right now. Obviously, there's no. I mean, if it took me years to get my vision to where it was, as in, not in like declining, I'm sure it might take some time for it to come back. So, but now it seems to be on a slow incline, or things are getting better. So I'm going to still keep doing my peptide protocols, my red light therapy, and my Syntonic therapy. And I'm going to keep going at it, and things seem to be working.
Yeah. And I want to touch on that, because like I could say, what's the harm in trying, right? If doctors are saying your vision is diminishing, what does it hurt to try these things? But, some of these things, like, I feel like we should maybe talk about that. Like you mentioned earlier, do your own research when it comes to peptides and certain things like that. What would you say to, some people online might say the Bates method could be potentially dangerous. Some of these practices may be dangerous in the sense that it could like shift people's ideas and attitudes away from conventional treatments. And like, do you have like a disclaimer or anything like that you want to mention? Or like, would you say like, I don't know, like, is there any kind of safety measures you want the listeners who are maybe interested in going this route? What would you advise to them?
Well, peptides have a very, very low side effect profile, which is why they're actually being hailed as the future of medicine. Light therapy, just depends what light you're shining in your face could be, the reds are very beneficial for the eyes. Again, my disclaimer is I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
And, I'm not giving any medical advice. So that's my disclaimer. But, I mean, what did I have to lose? I was already going blind. What am I going to do? Go blinder? Okay, sure, I'll take it. But, I was already doing what the doctors told me to do, and it was not working. I was wearing sunglasses all the time. My vision was getting worse. So what I mean, the Bates method has been around for 100 years, and it's coming back. I mean, there's a big resurgence of it, and I've talked to a lot of specialists and researchers and natural vision educators, and they've told me some of these stories of certain people with vision loss and all this healing that happened. I was like, this is so cool. Why isn't anyone talking about this? It's like the world's best kept secret. It's like the eyes can heal. So let's give them what they need,
Yeah. And speaking of the Bates method, you have a speaker who is going to touch on that topic at your summit.
Nathan.
Yep. Nathan. Yeah. And yeah, from Asheville, North Carolina. Shout out to North Carolina. But other topics you're covering is, like you said, you mentioned a bunch of times, red light therapy, past trauma and how that kind of can factor in, psychedelics, circadian biology, and much more. You're also going to talk about peptides. It seems like it's like a combination of like, would you say some of it's more experimental and some of it's more scientific?
I would say not much is experimental. I mean, some stuff has been going on for a while, and there's a lot of really great data showing that, maybe the Syntonics, the Syntonic and psychedelics talk is experimental, but I definitely see a merger between light therapies, Syntonic color therapies, in combination with psychedelics, just the way psychedelics are now being used for mental health treatments with with a guide or with that. So, because that touches upon alleviating the trauma aspect of vision loss.
That's what I was going to ask you. So when it comes to psychedelics, it's not actually affecting or like the eye specifically. It's kind of, how would you describe that? Would it be like a looking kind of inward and kind of helping you accept it and alleviating some stress around it? Or can you talk a little bit about how psychedelics play into this?
Sure. Yeah. And this is only from, some of my research and some of my own personal experiences. So it can kind of help twofold. Psychedelics are really good for helping alleviate trauma, locked trauma, unconscious trauma. So there's that aspect to it.
What psychedelics in particular?
Well, things like LSD, MDMA, psilocybin mushrooms, ketamine as well. I mean, there's an article showing that ketamine actually can help with restoring very common vision issues as well. Because again, it's not affecting the eyes; it's affecting the brain, because we see with the brains, not with the eyes. So. And now adding Syntonic color light therapy while, being on some of these psychedelics can really help expedite the process. So again, if you're reducing a lot of inflammation in the brain, you could essentially affect inflammation in the eyes too. So I think it could be twofold. Again, reducing the trauma, because a lot of vision issues, I think 80-90% of some vision issues, maybe all of them, have a trauma factor. And if you alleviate the trauma, because the body didn't want to see the trauma, so it just blurs it out. So, I mean, I have another theory that, certain genetic vision conditions end up stemming from trauma that's handed down ancestrally, which there's a lot of good data on that now. There's a really interesting book and the author Mark Wolin, he was blind himself. He started to go blind at 30. And when he started really digging into his own family trauma, his vision came back. So,
yeah, that's definitely an interesting topic and thought. Yeah, I'll have to read up on that. So when you say trauma specifically, are you saying like seeing something that's disturbing, or are you talking about maybe things that you're suppressing inside, like in terms of mental health? What specifically are you talking about when you talk about trauma?
Well, trauma can be, a big T trauma or a little T trauma. And what I mean by that, like, a big T trauma is like you witnessed your mother die in a car accident, or she died in a car accident, and, when you were young, and that was a very big traumatic experience, or your buddy in war, got shot in front of you, all those car accidents, etc. Those are all like big T traumas. Little T traumas are, your parents were always working, they weren't always around, and, like they didn't like abuse you, but they just weren't around. But the body's sensitive, and the body and soul are kind of sensitive. So the body can almost pick those same traumas up and have a similar response to it. It doesn't have to be something that big, but I've heard a few stories of that, where somebody lost their mother in a car accident, and shortly after they just went completely blind. I mean, I've heard a few stories, and most people can coincide something traumatic happening with when they started to wear glasses. With RP, I think, like I was, we were born with it. So how could we have been traumatized in that sense? But if you look at ancestral trauma, that is it's very real. It kind of goes in our lineage, and the trauma gets handed down in our genes and shuts genes off. So there's a lot of like science. There's a great book, like I said, by Mark Wolin called "It Didn't Start With You." He's on a few podcasts and talks a lot about it. But once you kind of really wrap your head around how that works, it starts to make sense. So, and if you can go into trying to find ways to alleviate any type of trauma, you're just going to be the better functioning, more free person.
Yeah, I could see that, man. I believe stress can change people dramatically, and that's just probably one example of of trauma and how it can affect the human body. And but yeah, I'll have to dive deeper into that, man. That sounds very interesting.
I can send you a little podcast that he was on. I think it's for about 45 minutes, where it kind of talks about his story and kind of gives you a little introduction to how that's the case. His book's amazing, by the way. Just different stories of how ancestral trauma manifested into different issues for different people as well. I'm not saying it only affects the eyes.
Yeah, no, it's like I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm like, I could totally see that being a thing. You could also mention, like trauma affecting people. Essentially, like what we have, RP, is we basically have genetic mistakes in our coding. Do you keep up much with like gene mutations and like companies like CRISPR and Procure and what they're doing in terms of like specifically focusing on gene mutations? Do you think those gene mutations could possibly be traced back to traumas? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
That's my theory, yes. And I'm not a molecular biologist by any means.
Yeah.
Just a citizen scientist, but I most definitely, for sure. I'm interested in gene therapy and stem cells as well. I'm whatever can help. Peptides kind of act like signaling molecules because basically all cells function the same. So whether the switch has been turned on or off, the peptides essentially act like a signaling molecule to tell the cells to do their thing. So whether they were affected by a genetic defect or not. And I think they work well with stem cells as well, like preparing the body and cells to better absorb any potential future treatment of stem cells. And certain different countries have certain restrictions and some don't of what can be done. So I haven't had any stem cell injections, but it's something I'd like to also try. Again, given a biohacker. I'm not sure what's going on with a lot of like the CRISPR stuff. I've heard some cool things about it, and I've heard some, we really don't know. Yeah. At first it was like amazing. It's the next best thing. And then, we started altering one thing and they realized it was changing a bunch of other things as well. And so I don't know. That's why I like these signaling molecules as peptides, because the body, they just seem a hell of a lot more natural right now. So unless we,
and it's something you can do currently, so I think that's a big thing. And so, like I said, we talked about it earlier, instead of just sitting around waiting, you're like, you can be proactive. I'm not saying you have to take peptides to do that, but even just like taking care of your overall health and mind is a step in the right direction, and then look into what Victor's talking about and see if maybe it's up your alley. Maybe it's something you want to start incorporating into your daily routine. Just have an open mind, I think, is all Victor's saying. And Victor, I feel like I keep bringing up your summit, and then we move away from it because we.
Oh yeah, well,
we could, because and I'm not complaining because these topics are interesting, but you're a speaker at your summit, right?
I am, yes, yeah.
And how many other speakers are there?
We have 8 in total.
Okay.
There's 8 in total. There's me, Dr. Seeds. Dr. Seeds is one of the leading experts on peptides. Dr. Jacob Lieberman, who I mentioned as well. He's an optometrist and a vision scientist. He wrote the book, Take Off Your Glasses and See, Light Medicine of the Future. Dr. Ray Gottlieb, he's an optometrist and a Syntonic light therapist. Him and I talk about psychedelics. There's Dr. Jack Cruz. He's a neurosurgeon. We talk about the importance of circadian biology. Nathan Oxenfield, he's a natural vision educator. Dr. Angela Petal is a behavioral optometrist. Barbara Aerosmith Young knows a lot about the brain and neuroplasticity. And then there's Brian Goll, who's a red light therapy specialist. Matt Maruka, he's the founder and CEO of Raw Optics, talking about junk light versus natural light. And Esther Joy Vanderwerf is a natural vision educator as well, talking about how she works with clients and helps them overcome vision challenges. So, a
lot of very cool topics. And so let's say if you're listening and you're interested in what exactly is the summit. It's virtual, but what does that exactly mean?
Well, I mean, summits are usually done live, and people congregate and listen to a bunch of talks, and but now, given the situation, everything kind of moved online. I decided to have this all pre-recorded. We're actually going to be doing a live Q&A the day of the release, but all the talks will just be available for anybody to watch at their own leisure. And, each talk is an hour long, and they're quite informative to really kind of give you some ideas on how, you can improve your health of your eyes and your body as well. I mean, like I said before, it's all really connected. So, yeah, so it's basically this Goldilocks environment that I've kind of created to share all these things that you might want to look into to make sure you're covering the bases to look after your eyes, your brain, and your health. So I didn't want to have too many speakers, but I felt like this covers all the bases that I wanted to cover right now. So,
yeah, it's a very well-rounded summit in terms of the variety of topics, and I think that I'm going to check it out for sure. So I look forward to it. And if you want to learn more, like I said earlier, you can visit the website. It's visionoptimizationsummit.com. There you can buy tickets. How much are tickets right now?
Tickets are $40, and that'll get you all the talks and a live Q&A for the rest of your life. The early bird ends a week before the summit launches, which is launching April 2nd. We are going to do a giveaway. If you want to participate in the giveaway, me and Lance will work something out for the listeners. So
definitely,
they can get two tickets for two people if they want to attend. We'll set that up at some point soon, and it'll be great. And if anyone ever has any questions, they can just feel free to reach out to me over Instagram or email me. And
what's your Instagram handle?
It's at Blind Biohacker, BlindBiohacker.
And what's your email?
My email is victorjamifsud@gmail.com.
Awesome. Yeah, and I recommend everyone go check out the Vision Optimization Summit. Victor, he ran through the speakers and what they're going to addressing, but you can dive a little deeper on their website if you want to see the specifics of each of those topics. And yeah, go get tickets now while they're on sale. Early bird special.
We'll be doing some more promoting. I'm going to launch all the speaker talks, in Instagram post, and some more info as it gets closer to the summit. So just follow me on Instagram for more updates and information. And this is going to be the first one. I'm sure I'll be doing another one maybe next year or maybe a little bit sooner. So,
yeah, and I'm assuming that this is the perfect time to organize something like this, during lockdown. But lockdown is coming to an end, or not lockdown, but the pandemic's coming to an end. When the world's open again, do you see yourself getting back out there in the documentary world, or do you think you're going to shift more back? Is this your new medium now, the summit?
I mean, I'd love to do a real summit, or for people just to meet up in a real building and have like a real live summit at some point. I would most definitely like to do another documentary film. I really miss traveling and filming and speaking on camera and things like that. So yeah, most definitely. I definitely see an emergence of where all the talks are going and technology in the future to just kind of continue on with what I'm doing. So yeah, it'd be nice to get outside. It's been a long winter. So
it has, man. But I think we did a good job at balancing, talking about various topics and then getting some self-promotion in there with that summit. How about we call it a conversation until you're back on again?
Great. I'm always happy to be here, man.
Right on, man. Yeah, you'll have to send me some of those books that you're talking about, and some articles, because I want to dive deeper into some of the topics we addressed. But yeah, everyone out there, thanks for listening. Victor, man, I'll catch you later.
Bye.
And that does it for episode 24 of the See-Through Podcast. And if you want to dig deeper into the Vision Optimization Summit, you can visit visionoptimizationsummit.com. There you can buy tickets and read more about the various speakers and topics. And as always, if you click the show description, you will find a link there. And again, if you haven't yet, give the podcast a follow on social media. The handle is @SeeThroughPod. And make sure to subscribe and follow to the podcast on whatever streaming platform you listen on. And if you have any suggestions or comments about the podcast that you want me to know, feel free to DM me on social media, or you can reach me by email. The email address for this podcast is theseethroughpodcast@gmail.com. And that does it for this episode, but I'll have another one coming for you next week, and it's going to be a great one. So you definitely will not want to miss out. Until then, stay transparent.